Okay, everyone. Thank you for being here. And we want to approve the agenda for July 12th. Or okay.
I moved to strike exactly. I moved to strike the student loans program.
I moved to strike EVP program, the defending fund.
Yeah,
thanks.
Okay, great. Any additional amendments to the agenda? Okay, can I entertain a motion to approve the agenda for today's council meeting?
I move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
By Sabrina. All those in favor? All those opposed? And all those abstaining? 7-0 vote. Approve the agenda. And now I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes from our previous council meeting that was on June 7th. Anyone would like to? There we go.
I move to approve the minutes for June 7th.
Okay. I'm so sorry. All those.
I second.
Second. I'm so sorry. Okay. Okay. Second by Sabrina. All those in favor, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8. All those opposed? All those abstaining? Yeah, we improved the minutes from the previous council. And now we will move into public comment. For our first round of public comment, it will be audio only. And each public comment can last up to 2 minutes. I think 2 minutes. So I'll start over here and go around the room so if anyone has any public comment. Audio only.
Is it like an audio and then?
There's the next one is audio and visual, and they turn back on. So. Okay. Okay. Now we'll move into our round of audio and visual. Okay. Hold on 1 second. Let me get the timer out. Okay, never ready.
I'm speaking on behalf of Regina, but she graduated, so. Hello, USAC board. My name is Regina. My name is not Regina Napolitano, but her name is Regina Napolitano. I was the project director for the Student Food Collective from January 2015 to June 2016, and the food security director from June 2015 to May 2016, under Heather Rosen in the USAC Office of the President. I am writing to give my unwavering support of Gabby Shearer as one of the future appointments for the USAC food security appointment. Gabby is extremely knowledgeable about the work we have been doing, and I have been training her to succeed. There is no one else who knows as much about the progress we have made with food security and what we are trying to achieve with the food collective, the Gabby. I worry that if she is not appointed, it will be a grave step backward for our campus food security plan. Gabby is extremely qualified and will do great things if she is appointed. That's
You have another minute.
Okay, cool. My name is Raj, I'm one of the appointments directors, and I just wanted to say that like Gabby is a very phenomenal candidate for this position. We interviewed over 20 people, but we always referred to Gabby as our number one choice the whole time. Um, she, sorry, she is the most knowledgeable about food security, and I was fairly confident after interviewing her that I could even talk about food security, because personally, like, I'm not that knowledgeable. But she was so thorough with her interview that I myself was very and you can imagine like 20 interviews switched into one, and that was Gabby's interview because every other candidate was lost a lot of stuff, but she had already covered it. So she kind of thoroughly went through everything just by being the first candidate, and that's why we loved her so much. We were looking for experience, passion, and knowledge, and Gabby gave us all of that and more. So I highly recommend it. Thanks.
Okay. Additional audio and visual public comment. Oh. A second. Whenever you're ready.
Hi, Council. I hope you're all having a wonderful summer so far. My name is Sajid Chirkmurli, and I'm going to be speaking on behalf of Brian Kahaya, who's one of the appointment directors of the USAC Office of the President. We, the appointment directors of the USAC Office of the President, fully recommend Gabrielle Shearer for campus food security appointment. In her interview with us, Gabby spoke eloquently about the multifaceted issue of food security, which not only includes access to food, but also making sure that food that is consumed is nutritious. Gabby was the first out of 20 we had, but we can still clearly remember her knowledge and passion for increasing food security at UCLA. Most importantly, Gabby had an excellent vision for the student co-op, one of the main duties of this appointment. She plans on incorporating many student groups who already deal with food security and making sure that this is a space where students can learn what it means to be food secure. With her work in the Student Food Collective, Gabby already has worked with giving students subsidized groceries. We have full confidence that Gabby completely understands the nuances of food security and the technical know-how to implement the student co-op as a staple institution at UCLA. Gabby also has a vision to build up this brand new appointment as well as to ensure that the co-op continues long after she has graduated from UCLA. Because of all the reasons stated, we, the appointment directors, have chosen Gabby as our number one pick for the campus food security appointment. She was unanimously chosen to help make UCLA a leader in food security. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Additional audio and visual public comment. Any comment? Okay, so none. I will close public comment. And before we move on to our special presentations, there are two items that I'd like to address. First, we have some guests at the council table, so I apologize at the beginning of the meeting, I didn't get a chance, so please, if you want to introduce yourself and who you're here representing, so sorry.
Yeah, so I'm Kevin Cotto, I'm just processing through all people.
Okay, great.
I'm Henry Comstock, I'm a GSA representative, speaking to you today about station.
Okay, great. And one other thing that I think is really important for us to. Oh, wait.
Sorry, yeah,
I'm so sorry.
That's okay, I just come here. I'm also with Mindy from the day ships. I'm the GSA VP Academic Affairs, and my name is Tess Armstrong.
Great. Happy. Okay, and now before we move into our special presentation, something that I'm sure that has been on a lot of people's mind since we had our council the last month. So many events going on around the United States and has really affected students. You know, talking about the events in St. Paul, Minnesota, and Baton Rouge, and Dallas last week. And, you know, obviously those are just a few. And of course, you know, you have Orlando a few weeks ago, and there's just been at least so much, you know, that's really affected people on such an intimate level going around. That's actually affected people on an intimate level. It's take a moment of silence just for all the pain, suffering that, you know, affected people around on our camps around the country. we'd like to have our special presentation. So if our presenters would like to come up to the front of the room, and we already have your PowerPoint up and ready. So whenever you are ready, you will have 15 minutes for your presentation, and then we'll have 5 minutes following members of the council have any questions. So whenever you're ready to present, I will start the time.
Like I said, my name is Lindy. Thank you very much for having Tess and I here today. We wanted to let you know a little bit about one of the big issues that we've been talking about in GSA, and we really wanted to get an undergraduate position on this because we feel like it really affects you as well. And we want to explain to you our thoughts about what would be a best solution, and hopefully get you guys on board with supporting us in action next year. Okay, so the issue of TA allocations, basically we mean finding a qualified TA to teach your sections, has been a big issue both in GSA and also in the Senate councils that we go to. It's brought up every time that there's a review for one of the big departments that they're worried about filling their TA shifts. Okay? So certain issues overall at UCLA have led to sort of an imbalance in the structure of teaching. One, graduate student enrollment has remained about level across all of the departments for about the last 15 years. There's been an increase of undergraduate enrollment at the same time, and I'm sure you guys all know there's going to be a lot of new students coming this fall as well. We have aging faculty and a lot of retirements in many departments, along with reduced faculty hiring. And also you have a real focus at UCLA on having large TE lecture courses that require TAs to do a lot of hands-on teaching in small sections. So some of the consequences that we found because of this are, one, that there's insufficient TA positions in certain departments. Now, graduate students, when we talk about TA shifts and what it means to us, on the one hand, it's our funding, right? This is how we support ourselves as graduate students. Secondly, it's a really important part of our professionalization, because many of us are going to be teachers in the future, so we need that practice, okay? If we don't get this funding position, we have to look for work outside USA, we may work overtime, or you may have graduate students drop out, which is not uncommon. In terms of a negative for undergraduates, is that there's really a focus at UCLA on how many undergraduates you can teach, which is not always good for the overall climate, in the sense that if you reduce graduate students, then you're reducing what it means to be a university instead of a college. There's something that adds to the environment with having that extra layer of education. Okay, so we're worried about also reducing the number of classes and the breadth of classes if you don't have the graduate students there to help teach sections. Secondly, in some other departments, there's the opposite problem. We have insufficient graduate students to act as TAs, and then we've had cases of unqualified TAs coming in from different departments, or exploiting academics or lecturers in various positions. Okay, so difficulties finding someone capable to teach. And also the pressure to increase section size, which I hope is a concern for you guys as well, because we certainly feel like the larger the class size gets, the less hands-on attention you get. And finally, we're thinking about this a little bit proactively because there's been sort of an ad hoc approach to addressing it in different departments, and we're worried about the repercussions of this if you just sort of go without thinking about the big picture and what this might ultimately lead to in terms of what sort of policies that may seem useful in the short term, what sort of far-reaching effects that they may have. Okay, so 4 strategies we've been talking about: 1, increase graduate student enrollment; 2, a TA marketplace where we can advertise TA shifts across the university between departments; having some undergraduates help TA, and also pair teaching. So I'm going to run through real quickly sort of our thoughts on the pros and cons of each of these. For graduate student enrollment, well, it does directly address this imbalance. But the problem is that we don't want graduate students taken just to fill a teaching slot, right? You should have graduate students based on the ability of the department to support them, the quality of the graduate student, and the ability of them to find a job later, not just to kind of fill a structural problem in the university. Secondly, some departments, like the huge education department that we have, really rely on TA shifts on other departments. So it's really a more complex problem than just increasing graduate student enrollment. For the TA marketplace, this is one that we're hoping is going to really help a lot with the problem. We think that it's gonna really help find qualified TAs in other departments. Maybe they have a master's in one program or doing a PhD in another. It's gonna allow sort of this imbalance maybe to be balanced out across UCLA as a whole. Like I said, some departments have too many, some have too little spots. And also the professional students, like the ones in the education school or the Anderson school, may be able to have an opportunity to have some funding and some teaching experience. However, we're also worried that maybe specialized training, it might still have an imbalance. We're not sure it's going to work out perfectly. And certain departments are still very vocal in wanting to allocate TA-ship to their own students, even if it's last minute. So we're worried about sort of the logistical problems that might arise. But we're hoping that this one is going to be very helpful in alleviating most of the issues. We have thought about teaching, having undergraduates TA, and this is something that's been proposed in some of the department reviews. Certainly we think there are a lot of undergraduates that have the skills and the expertise for this, and it's a great experience, and they may have some personal experience teaching. However, overall, we're a little bit worried about institutionalizing it as a policy, because as graduate students, we ourselves feel like we're exploited sometimes, and we're worried that there's even more ways for undergraduates to end up being exploited. So we want to kind of draw some of these to your attention, not because we don't think some undergraduates would make wonderful teachers, but we're concerned again about the larger picture. One, that a lot of times it requires skills beyond just what you learn in that class. Maybe you got an A in that class, but again, you see on those evaluation forms, your TA is supposed to bring more to the class than just what you learned in that class. You would need pedagogical training, and we don't really have the structures in place. Even graduate students, second and third year graduate students are still saying we feel like we need more training. So I think that that's an important issue. It could negatively affect time to degree for undergraduates. You're placed in a position of authority over your peers and friends. Again, we have graduate students who are saying it's hard even for them to have to teach people a couple of years younger than them. There's always pressure in sections to distribute the materials to fraternities, to sororities, the exams and that kind of stuff, so that's a problem. You get evaluations, which is but some more serious issues are, you also have difficult situations that can arise in sections like sexual harassment issues with Title IX, safety issues, illnesses, things like this. Not uncommon. I actually had all three show up in my spring seminar, and this it's difficult, it's stressful, on top of the teaching stress. We're worried that they may offer undergraduates lower salaries, overwork them in various ways, and not cover all the hours that they work, because this is what happens to us right now. We know what happens, and we're worried it's going to happen more to undergraduates. Two, we're worried that it may result in reduced graduate student enrollment overall, and reduced graduate student funding, which is already not very good. So, of course, for us, it's an important issue that we need something to let us support this effort, right? Also, we need the professionalization skills of the competitive public job market. We're concerned about a general push towards the decline in educational quality at UCLA, starting with the lack of instruction from faculty and lack of instruction by graduate students. We're worried about kind of the slippery slope there. What does it mean for educational quality? And also devaluation of graduate students and the degree eventually. If you're saying that you don't need a specialized degree to do teaching responsibilities, what does that mean for the viability of having that degree? Okay. Pair teaching. This is one that we're hoping maybe we can have in reserve. Maybe we can find a way to let some undergraduates teach but have a paired experience so we can harness sort of the fun effects of both situations. But we are worried that it may be regulated a bit. So the pros, we're thinking it could be a combination. There would be less time burden and responsibility for the undergraduates. You might get some benefit from working with experienced TAs, graduate student TAs, and you don't really need as much time for the pedagogical preparation and less time commitment. So we could give sort of a subset of duties to undergraduate TAs and save on both ends there. With the cons, we're worried that there is the potential to increase graduate student burden and time commitment, and having to work out what exactly that paired relationship is. Again, there's always some issues to work out with division of labor, and we may need to think about additional oversight on the part of the university in terms of picking these pairings, kind of policing them, these kinds of things. Okay, so we hope, first of all, to have this marketplace set up next fall, ideally, to have pair teaching as a possible option as a reserve, something to think about. But most of all, we're interested in really lobbying graduate division to address the larger issues that have led to this situation. That there's an issue with structural ratio of teaching that has also to do with hiring faculty. To think about what their position is and what the value graduate student is here, also in terms of the education for undergraduates. We want to lobby them to reduce the TA ship cap. There's a cap the number of quarters that we can teach. And also, we're concerned about them pushing to increase section size, which I also think negatively affects educational quality. And we want them to have a consistent policy across the university. One last thing we'd like to say. So, we're interested in getting your opinions on this, like I said. We thought maybe one way that we could do this to work together with USAC is to offer to help design some kind of survey to get some undergraduate points of view on your concerns about teaching in general, teaching quality, class size, the breadth of offerings, section preferences, maybe issues that you have with TAs that you want us to address, these kinds of things. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And now, 5 minutes of questions from the council. So, any members of the council have questions?
I know you had mentioned how you want to create this like marketplace by next fall. So in terms of surveying or the grander scheme of things, like what exactly would you want from USAC? I'm currently the academic affairs commissioner, so I would love to help out in any way that I can the undergraduate population. Thank you so much for bringing this to our attention. Obviously, it does occur here, with undergraduates and graduate students as well. So I just kind of want to hear a little bit more about that.
Sure. We are looking to present some information to the Council of Presidents. That's going to be the end of July. Also, at the Board of Regents meeting, which is going to be in mid-September. And then to work sort of progressively on this over the course of next year for some of the larger structural issues. So in terms of what we specifically want from USAC, we would like you to consider sort of our position and see maybe if you let us know what your position is, if we could create sort of a joint position. This is ideally what we want. So we can report back to administration that we have a joint undergraduate, graduate position on TA ship allocations in this issue. Ideally, if we could have that by this fall, that would be great. In terms of the survey, we just want to get it started. I think maybe if we could have it implemented, say, by the end of fall quarter, that would be good. I think that the university is very interested in undergraduates' opinion on all issues, rightly so. So if we could have it fairly early in the year, that would be great, but it's no rush. We have started gathering some information from SIOs to kind of maybe have an informal marketplace by the beginning of next fall, and we're going to hope to push for graduate division. They also have some of their own initiatives to get that up and running, hopefully again by the end of the quarter. So I would say the priority is to kind of have a position, maybe a joint position on this issue. And secondly, just to have a plan and schedule towards working towards this survey.
Okay, well, I just wanted to say, well, this is kind of more of a comment, maybe leading into a question, but so I had a chance to sit down a few times with Michael, who's the GSA president, and kind of touch on this briefly. So I just want to, at least from my perspective, we are really supportive to partner with GSA on a survey and more wider sort of leadership on this issue. So we're happy to discuss with our council and see what ways that we can assign potentially academic affairs commissioner or might be ideal to talk about this issue with you and kind of assemble. So thank you so much. And in addition to that, do you have an email that members of the council can follow up with you that you might want to say that you can write down?
Yeah, that would be great if you could send it out. I'm sorry, I just put it on there.
Oh, no worries. Okay, well, just so y'all know, Sabrina will send that out so you have that information, and we'll follow up and talk amongst ourselves and see how we can best work together on this. But, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, there is our only special presentation for today, and now we will move into appointments, starting with the student-initiated outreach.
If I could, like to just briefly speak before we start on our individual assignments?
Sure.
So, I just want to, as we start getting into really the flow of doing large numbers of interviews for appointments each time we come together, to reiterate that with these appointments, the goal is not to find the one and only best fit from among all of the 30-odd thousand undergrads that you have for each position, but rather find someone who is passionate and committed to the position they applied for, who has the potential to learn and be successful in it. Understanding that for the vast majority of these positions, these are campus-wide committees that have either students who are returning in the second year of a 2-year term, and or faculty and administrators serving alongside them who are committed to mentoring them, training them, and supporting them through the process. As you hear from individuals, it often becomes tempting to compare an applicant for a position to the ideal. But you don't always have that to choose from. In appointing the appointment chairs, the team in the president's office that's looking at appointments, Danny has charged them with finding from those who have applied for positions the most qualified and not putting forward anyone they don't believe can be successful. You have your ARC process where a subsection of council will have had the opportunity to ask questions and will have given feedback that gets shared with you when you come together before the interviews. Just because a question's been asked in the appointment review committee doesn't mean it should not be asked again at this large table. We weren't all there. There's the opportunity to hear and have different perspectives on responses, but also, as you go through interviews yourselves, one of the things that an interview does is you learn from the questions being asked of you what's important to those who are interviewing you. And so the same individuals may have given less than stellar answers in the ARC process, but those questions that you asked may have inspired them to go do more work and come back with a better, fuller answer to this table. So I encourage you, as you listen to all of your applicants for all the positions that are going to come before you over the next few months, to ask yourself, can these individuals be successful? Do they have a basic understanding of what the committee is they're seeking to join, what the role is they're seeking to fulfill? But not, are they already an expert in the field? There are a few positions you appoint that are different. And certainly one that's coming up tonight is the USAC media position. That's not a committee. That is a position that will basically do a job for you. You need someone who is qualified right now to do that kind of work. But where it's an appointment to a campus committee, no, they won't be alone. They won't be allowed to fail. And so if they understand what the committee does, have a valid reason for interest, and are committed to attending every time that committee meets and putting in the hours that go into the work of the committee, reporting back to you on what the committee's doing, then I ask you to be open-minded to the possibilities that come in front of you. With the ARC process, those who do participate and vote at ARC, you're voting either, yes, I think this person's qualified, no, I think this person isn't, or you're abstaining because you don't have enough information. Abstaining because you need to say no, but you don't want to say no, is not an acceptable alternative. You abstain because you have a personal conflict of interest, which doesn't mean you know something about the person. That just means you're able to evaluate that objectively. It may mean that this position being appointed is going to actually work in some ways for you. But not that, oh, this is a friend, this is someone I've worked with in the past, this is someone I'm a member of an organization with. That may just give you more basis to actually evaluate them rather than conflict. If the overall code of ARC is to not so again, vote yes or no. The abstention is not, I don't want to say what I'm really thinking, abstention is I have some sort of conflict. Because if you sit through the interview, you will not have too little information to make a decision. So trust your instincts, but I say trust your instincts while being open to the possibility for someone to grow into their full potential. I think for many of you, whatever your first position was, whether it was on a committee or working in a USAC office, someone hired you not because you were already expert, but because they saw potential. So I encourage you to give that same respect and opportunity to those that come in.
Thank you, Dr. Geller. And with that, now we will move into our outreach committee. Susan Martin.
ARC did not interview for this position, but if you guys want to look at the committee itself. So the purpose of Student-Initiated Outreach Committee, or SIOC, is eligibility and education of disadvantaged students to the University of California, particularly for this UCLA. UCLA students who have initiated outreach projects to school, which is low academic performance, school-wide, and high attrition rates, may apply for funding from SIOC to projects. The SIOC ensures that the projects adhere to SIOC guidelines, they evaluate the projects in the proposal, and then they allocate the funds. Yeah, so it's unstructured position that players do not place in. That is a little bit about the position. And you all got the resume from her.
Okay then, with that being said, our applicant is not here tonight, but I tried to give you the information so you can evaluate if you thought. Let's move into a discussion. I move to approve Susan Martinez for the student-initiated outreach. So now we move into discussion and I motion. Okay, I'm so sorry. It's in a few weeks.
I move to approve Susan Martinez as the student-initiated outreach committee.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sabrina. So now, did anyone have any questions or any? Second. Okay, so you all had a chance to review the resume, so if there are not any out, then I suggest that the council member calls the question and we move right into the vote.
So, did anyone interview Susan?
My appointment director.
Is this interview or how does
By
this
council.
position?
I was not aware that it made it.
I believe I'm correct in that ARC does not have to review them because the second petition is recommended that we do, but. Yeah, for, I don't think council,
Not a consent. Let me see,
but they have to vote.
well, there's two big ones. There's council consent approval. So there's presidential appointments that just need consent, that they are received as appointments and don't come to council for an actual interview. But the student initiated access committee appointment is not under the consent, it's under the council approval. And so it does say the following appointments should go before the ARC committee and the council for approval. All to your appointments, you see it's like before your purpose, and then 1 year. If this position does not, so the one thing, if you're saying that this position does not receive a stipend, appointments that receive stipends, and therefore, in your bylaw today, is under, they have to come out, and it's not a consent. So this may be one that you want to go through your appointments again, see how there may be some changes, and perhaps move this to just a consent only section of your bylaws.
Okay, yeah, because I think that's what my understanding was
Yeah.
going into this process. Okay, then, would we, so,
Right now, there's
okay, then I guess, I'll ask, council to table this.
Yeah, so what we could do is perhaps present a bylaw change. It would have to be sent out at least 7 days in advance of the meeting. And you also want, if you are interested in doing bylaw changes to the appointments for non-stipend appointments, make sure they're moved into the consent section of your bylaws. I made the announcement today, so the public's aware that you're going to be bringing bylaw changes to the next council meeting. And then we'll send out that information as CRC needs to write up those bylaw changes. And so then you can bring those bylaw changes, you vote on the bylaw change first, and then you can vote by consent.
Okay, well then with that being said,
And just some information, in the memorandum of understanding between USAC and the Student Initiative Outreach Committee, it's stated as well that USAC approves the chairperson of SIOC, so it's a lot more than just a bylaw change. So I think just having them go through the ARC process and doing it properly and keeping the systems that are in place through all of our guiding documents already is the best.
okay, well with that being said, thank you Zach for that. So with that being said, then I'll go ahead and ask that the council tables this appointment to our next.
And that they would come in for it.
Yeah,
But
and
that is a good point, that for this appointment, even though they may not receive stipend, it'd still be an appointment you would want.
Okay, then, that, then I guess we will, we'll actually have to vote on it, so.
I vote to table, Susan Martinez for, position. I move to table, Susan Martinez for the Student Initiative Outreach Committee to next week.
Second? Thank you, Ms. Sandra. All those in favor, say 3, 4, 6, 7, 8. All those opposed? None abstaining. This appointment has been tabled. Now we will move on to our next appointment, which is for Campus Food Security Chair, Gabrielle Schaefer.
All right, she said she goes to the gap, so yeah. So basically, this is an appointment that was created last year, that was in the works. This campus food security appointment serves to meet the needs of the student body of UCLA around issues of food and security. This appointment will be particularly concerned with overseeing and developing the creation and operating the Student Food Collective and the Student Food Security Informational Center. This appointment, which are trained graduate students, shall be selected by the undergraduate council president and shall be required to appear before ARC and undergraduate student council. The selected appointees will serve this position for the duration of 1 year. The position does receive a stipend provided by the UC Office President through the Food Security Work Group and UCLA's Healthy Campus Initiative. And then one will note that these appointees will work closely and attend meetings with Food Security Work Group, housed through CPO, as well as the Student Food Collective at UCLA. for now, for ARC. So there is a note that we want to make to council, and I sent it to you in an email, but just to out loud to the public. So ARC, the only time we could meet was when a phone interview with Gabby was walking to work, so it was not, that's not your typical interview environment. Oh, yes, and we urge council to ask questions of Gabby to further your understanding for knowledge in regards to food security and security specifically. Because like Deb Keller was saying, a lot of what you're looking for in an appointment is someone when you ask questions and they don't know the answer, they go back and find that answer and come back with more information. That being said, ARC to the 003, no recommendation vote. We felt that there was a lack of mentioning of food insecurity as in regards to students struggling to provide food for themselves. She had plenty of knowledge on nutrition and she had ample knowledge and experience through the, I'm sorry, I'm struggling with my voice. Had plenty of knowledge of resources found around campus, not as much off campus. But we did feel that there was a lack of mentioning of food insecurity with students struggling to even find food for themselves, or the kind of tension between paying for housing and schooling versus food. So that's where our one word came from, where we could not vote yes. Yeah, and
Okay, so, Gabby, you will have 1 minute for an opening statement, whenever you're ready.
Hello everyone, my name is Gabby Sherry and I am a candidate for the food security appointment. And since my freshman year in fall quarter, I was a member of the Student Food Collective and working closely with Regina, the previous food appointment of last year to build the food buying club, which was basically a cooperative without a building. And so we ran and we organized a student food collective by going bi-weekly to the farmers market to obtain the food to then sell to students at wholesale prices to make food security more accessible to them. In addition, over the past year, we actually accomplished getting a space for the student food collective that will be at the next floor Kirchhoff, where we will work, in fact, next minute I will work to make other organizations interested in food security across campus to have this on the space.
Okay, thank you. And now, we will have 5 minutes of questioning from the council. Especially I recommend, since she was voted that way in ARC, that council members ask questions and engage. So, council members have questions, then is that?
Given that this is a sort of a new position that was kind of just established this past year, with the establishment of the co-op, what are some concrete goals that you have for the upcoming year and really getting it running off the ground and successful at its beginning stages as a co-op?
Okay, so, I mean, right now, what we have substantially already in order is the food buying club, which, like I said, is basically the co-op without a building, right? So what we would do is we would start with the continuation of that, and we would make the food buying club with basically a pickup space for students. So right now, how it runs is students order their food online, we go as a team to the farmers market where we have our relationship with Gibson Family Farms, where they're already just like telling us ahead of time, like, here's the amount of, here's the produce that we have for this week, your students can place an order, and then we will give it to them for wholesale prices. So for example, strawberries or canned strawberries would be like $2, for example. And so then they would bring it back to an apartment where students would then come and pick up their groceries after we organize them and put their names on it. But as with the invention of the new space, that would start off with the food buying club running how it continually does, and students would then have the space here on campus to pick it up. So the main thing with that would be that students would see it as more accessible because they wouldn't have to like reserve only these 4 hours on a Sunday to go pick it up from this person's apartment, but rather Kirchhoff, which is a, pretty commonly flow through space, they could walk up and say, hey, I ordered my produce, and then it's there where we would have refrigeration and other storage space so that people would have more availability and time to get it. That's one thing. And then second, with the cooperative space, I really want to have multiple organizations to be able to have their information there. So I want to get in contact with the people working with Swipe Out Hunger, the CSO Food Closet, Healthy Campus Initiative, and like the people working for the Global Food Security Fund. So that way those people can know that we exist, and then that the people who use our service will also know about those other services, and the people that use those services will know about us. And so basically with that, with the space, people maybe are coming in to pick up groceries, but that's not the only thing. Maybe they're coming in to learn about more resources, whether it's how to apply for CalFresh, or how to cook something with the leftovers of their tomatoes from the week before, you know, how, or like offer different programs and different educational seminars in that space that will help people with what they need. Because food security is something that isn't the same for everyone, and insecurity is not always meaning that you have no food, where that is one element of food insecurity, is not having enough food or food at all. And also, 23% of people actually, according to the survey that the UC Office of the President did in 2015, said that yes, they have food to eat, but it's not the food that's like fulfilling them either financially or nourishingly or culturally appropriate to what they practice what they're eating. So hopefully the space would be a resource where people can understand what is there for them at UCLA, and also that they can meet there to like learn, but also then go from there to other spaces.
Okay. Additional questions from the council? Ready?
All right, so we asked this that you changes what does it for insecurity mean compared to the last one, and like the different levels of that?
Okay, so food insecurity, basically being food secure would mean that you have access and affordability, and also that the food is sustainably, running sustainably for you, meaning like if you have access, food security and food insecurity.
I asked insecurity, but we're looking for different levels of security.
Right, so I mean, ideally food security would mean that you have affordable access to food that is culturally appropriate regardless of any of your positionality. And so people in their ideal situations, if they're not struggling, they will be able to attain that for themselves, but a lot of times, at least at UCLA, students don't have full food security because maybe it's their first time being financially independent, or they're working to pay for their schooling as well as their housing, because I mean, food insecurity and housing insecurity also go hand in hand. And so it's meaning maybe like one of the pillars of like that survey that Neapolitan did was that students were saying that they often would skip one meal a day to maybe pay for their books and things like that. And so there's different pillars of it. There's students not being, there's students that eat, just because you're full every day, maybe you're not eating, maybe you're still food insecure because you're not eating all the things that you should eat.
Okay, that does it for exhaust our time for questions. So now you will have a 1 minute clip.
Okay, so I just want to say that over the past 2 years, I've gotten really involved with these issues. Yes, in the food, student food collective, but also in the food studies minor. I've taken a class spring quarter that was an English class about California foodways and food systems, where we talked a lot about like access to food. We talked about basically how that operates in California and Los Angeles in Pacific, as well as right now, I'm currently in the Food Justice and Food Security Service Learning class under the Civic Engagement Department, where every week we talk about different issues, whether it's food policy, food, like environmental issues related to food, and we also go out and we work an internship twice a week, combating these issues in Los Angeles. So through that, I gained a lot of experience about like how the issue is being handled in LA, and how these partners are related back to you.
Okay. Thank you. And now, as we move to voting at whatever you're comfortable with, when we have a discussion or vote, you can remain in the room, or you can step outside. Okay, sure. Okay then, can I entertain a motion to approve Gabby for the food security chair? Oh, I'm so sorry. Let's just get back to it. Yeah, Jordan.
I move to approve that position of
Okay, great. Now we'll move into discussion. So, does any member of the council want to? Oh, okay. Second action. Okay, so now we're in discussion. Okay, Summer. So does anyone have any comments? Sabrina?
Okay, couple of things. Number one, I want to reiterate that it was a photo movie while she was walking to work, not necessarily a very environmental reason. Number two, Eris, we did note, as it was me, Yvonne, and Christina, we wanted to note that we did not want to write her off completely, but we did feel the need to vote no due to the lack of mentioning total food insecurity where students are even struggling to pay for it. And that someone else can go on and remember the third point. There's a third point.
Additional commentary from the council? Or
Oh,
yeah.
Sure. I remember. The third point is that from what I saw here, and if you all have shared the document, she did explain incredibly specifically a lot of answers, which I really like to see from appointed candidates. But yes, and also to remember that this is for the chair position, it is a standing position.
Okay, additional. Okay, seeing none, can I like to, yes, Sabrina?
Also, this was my third point when I read it. I have had a lot of people reach out to me, both in a professional sense and a friend sense, that have heard about Gabby applying for this position and very, very positive ways about her. So I think that does kind of show the passion that she does carry over to this position. While Eris did recommend no, from what she interviewed, I am very in awe by the amount of people that I have had reach out to me and the people that came to the public comment in support.
Additional.
We just the interview itself spoke volumes because it's like Gabby's really good people, and I think that speaks volumes because it's not just I have a plan, it's I have a really creative plan, I have a really implementing plan. And I think that regardless of stipends, regardless of other recognition, I think she advocated really strong on something. And her ability to essentially develop what is new and something that we can push.
So, Jordan.
Oh yeah, I mean, so Gabby's, she's part of CDC, she's in the conscious department, and so irrelevant to the position itself, but speaking to her work ethic and passion, she definitely works really hard in the community, and she's around her very small. So I definitely would recommend her.
Okay. Additional discussion from the council?
Although I would agree with Juan on ARC and reviewing having, I think that she has been otherwise today, and I think that she's put herself.
Okay, then, I guess, we'll move right into a vote then, seeing no other discussion. All those in favor of approving Gabby Shear as Campus Food Security Chair, all those in favor, please raise your hand. 2, 4, 6, 8. All those opposed? And all those abstaining? So 8-0-0 vote, Gabby has been approved. Congratulations. Okay, great. And now moving on to our last item. Before we go into this appointment, given that we decided to table the SIOC appointment, maybe I can ask Patty to clarify this, because we are operating on the same assumption for this one as SIOC, given the second situation, so I'd love to direct. Yeah. It was last year.
I didn't really know, in the bylaws, yeah, so I think you can choose how you want to appoint this. So if you'd like to go ahead and vote
it's not specified in the bylaws that it needs to go through CRC. It's essentially you're hiring a position that all council vote. So you don't have to have a in-person interview if you choose not to, or if you'd like to have that, you can. So it's really up to the council.
Okay, well, just to give the background on my appointment directors, they would thought very highly of Sarah's ability to navigate social media and really improve the brand of USAC as a whole and engaging in a lot of different ways, and that's why they recommended her appointment to me. So if you would like to table this till next week and have an in-person appointment, then you're more than happy to do that, or
I think it is in the bylaws as consent.
Okay.
So community consent. But I think it's called in the bylaws of communications director.
Oh, okay.
So that's why we weren't seeing it.
Okay,
as that.
thank you for
That's-
clarifying that.
Yeah. So we can just vote via consent.
Okay, and then,
Consent approval.
then I ask the council to consider, this approval by consent unless there are any objections. Any objections from the council?
I personally would like more consultation or at least some form of vetting process, just so that, the Sarah herself. Definitely her resume is very impressive, but also I just want to see, how she approaches herself, how she vouches for herself for this position. And I feel that in that sense, we can also garner a sense of how passionate she is for the position and how she will further improve the position beyond what it is stated as.
Okay, yeah, well, that's totally fair, that this will still be a consent item, but if we wanna have an interview next week in council, then, I'm more than happy to table this and invite Sarah to come up here before us. So with that being said, can someone entertain a motion to table this appointment until the next council meeting?
I move to table the appointment for communications director.
Yeah.
Until our next council meeting.
Okay, great, all those in favor? Or? I'm so sorry. Second by Ashley. I know, okay, all those in favor of, tabling 1, 2, 3, 8, all those opposed? And I was abstaining. Okay, we will table, communications director until the following council meeting, which is 2 weeks from now, July 26th. And that, concludes our appointments. Now we will move into officer and member reports. And starting with myself. Okay, so since we've had a 4-week hiatus from council, I have a few things I'd like to update the council and the body on that I've been trying to work on. So one of my main priorities over the summer and the last 4 weeks was trying to really connect with a lot of administrators on campus to start building those relationships so that when we all get back to campus in the fall in our office on campus, we have these direct lines of communication established in terms of connecting other members of council, myself, student groups, so to really start having those conversations with a lot of different administrators. So a few of the meetings that I had was one with the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Housing and Hospitality Service, Pete Angelis, to talk about the issue of housing security for students, to really ask a lot of questions about, affordable housing on the Hill and what the university is actively doing to support housing in Westwood, and if they're looking at different properties, and what's the process for going and buying properties, and what sort of local ordinances landlords, consider when they're trying to build apartments, and like the issue of like density within apartment complexes and whatnot. So that was one I sat down with him. In addition to that, I sat down with Julie Sina, who is the Associate Vice Chancellor for Alumni Affairs and the CFO of the UCLA Foundation. And I talked about different ways in which USAC could be a partner with the Alumni Association for the upcoming year, and especially on the topic of connecting our alumni to students in terms of engaging them opportunities outside of campus, like internships and other ways that we can really utilize our alumni network. So I look forward to that partnership. In addition to that, as I'm sure Ashley joined me today, we had last week was the first summer in the union, and we're really happy, and thank you so much to ASUCLA for letting USAC be represented at that. And just so you all, just a general reminder, so you all know, several of the offices signed up to be at Summer Union throughout the summer, so check your calendars and make sure you know which week you're gonna be there to represent USAC. You know, you get to sit at your table and engage with all these new students and answer all the questions they have, and they're so excited to be involved in student government, so that was a great experience. Additionally, I sat down for lunch last week with the Vice Provost and Dean for Undergraduate Education, Pat Turner, talk about different ways in which USAC students can advocate for issues affecting their academic success, and I'm sure I'll be following up with Ashley in the future, specifically continuing on the work that my predecessor talked about, which is advocating for a dead days before finals and different proposals associated with that. So continuing those conversations and establishing that line of communication, I think, is really important, not only for that issue, but so many different issues that affect the undergraduate education experience here at UCLA. In addition to that, something that was, really we talked about a lot at the end of the year was, after the June 1st event with Professor Klug's passing, we called the Chancellor for the establishment of a campus-wide task force to review all safety protocol at UCLA, ranging from room work to protocol for faculty and students and the availability of mental health services and law enforcement and how they participate in so many different things. So we convened the task force last week. I'm able to be a part of that. I'm sitting headed by Administrative Vice Chancellor Michael Beck. So being able to be included in those conversations as a student, advocating for student interests and policies that we want to see, I think is really important to be included in that. We're going to meet all throughout the summer and provide recommendations in the fall when everyone's back on campus to the Chancellor to revisit safety mechanisms on campus. Something that I'm going to be doing in the next week, and I'd love to get your input after, is I'm going to be setting up, they're creating a website for the task force to get input from the community. And I'd really like to, look for your input for issues on safety on campus that you'd like me to address in this committee, as well as reaching out to the larger student body. So that website that I'll be posting around social media, I'll let you know when that's up and running, but it should be in the next week or so for the task force. In addition to that, we are planning the Council of Presidents Retreat, which is all the undergraduate and graduate presidents from across the system for the end of July that we're going to be having here at UCLA. And so we're really excited about that. I've had the chance to have a lot of conversations with my fellow student body presidents to hear about the concerns on their campus, as well as bringing light to them the issues on UCLA's campus, and kind of seeing where we can have common ground and build partnerships across the UC in terms of our student activism. In addition to that, I had the opportunity to sit down with Raja, the director of the LGBT Center, to talk about different ways in which USAC can be, strive to be strong allies for the communities within the LGBT that utilize the LGBT Resource Center, and really find ways that we can work together. Some of the ideas that were proposed was having council do our own training in the fall when everyone's on campus. So I really encourage that to think about when the summer we're all back on fall to do a training with the LGBT Center that we can all be a part of. Additionally, I'm trying to reach out to the various different presidential campaigns in the fall of the election to really find ways that we can introduce students and get them excited about the election. And I was able to have a phone call with the state director for Hillary Clinton's campaign for California. And in that call, I talked about different ways in which we could partner with students to have speakers come on campus from the campaign and to talk about volunteering. And I'm in the process of really trying to reach out to the other campaigns as well, the Republican nominee and the Green Party and the Libertarian Party, to really make sure that all the major parties are respecting this process. And that was just the phone call I was able to have so far. So I apologize for the length of my report, but were there any questions on any of that from the council? Okay, thank you. Seeing none, we'll move to the internal vice president.
All right, I'm not sure. Basically, a couple things to remember. One, I will be reaching out to you all about the offices having internships and to kind of get like a unified internship advertisement and campaign, making sure that we reach out to like all pockets of campus. And it's just not really sorry if I take a long time to email you back. I'm looking at the Lake Area this summer and it's not great Wi-Fi or anything. I'm not on my computer a lot. And then also I've just been working with my directors to figure out how to have how to have the best applications for this coming fall, which is coming pretty soon. And then as well as trying to learn as much as I can about the budget. And I think that's it. I'll be emailing you with kind of figure out how your internships are working.
Okay, great. Now, the proxy for the external vice president, do you have anything
Yeah.
to share with the council?
So, I'm the campus organizing director in the EVP office, and along with our legislative director, Nick Lewinsky, we've been organizing, this year's UC Student Organizing Summit, which was last year known as the UCSA Conference. And it's an opportunity to have UCLA's issues represented by UCSA in their 2-year campaign. So I just encourage everyone on the council. I think our applications are open until next. So.
Okay, thank you. And now, the academic affairs commissioner.
Hi everyone, great to be back after a month. Basically what I've been up to is kind of talking with, my chiefs of staff and then communicating with staff members as well in terms of, their specific duties and kind of visions for next year in terms of the academic affairs commission. I've set up a few meetings for this next week, one regarding college academic mentorship. So in relation to having peer counselors be physically in Kirkhoff, so bringing them outside of Murphy, speaking with Corey Hollis, Erica Villanueva, and Brian Henry, who all work in college academic advising. Another meeting that I'm planning hopefully within this next week will be with Eric Wells, who's a committee panelist within the academic senate in order to go over kind of the rough outlines that we have for our academic appointments, not only on the Senate, but through the commission as well. And then some of them, again, will be presented to USAC for approval, but most of them went through interviews this past spring and will be serving as academic appointments for the upcoming year.
Okay, thank you to the academic affairs commissioner. And now, to our administrative representatives, starting with Gail.
So, the first thing that you may have noticed is that Christine Moffett is not here. Christine took another position. Last Friday was her last day, and she has moved back to Humboldt State, where we have recruited her away from. When she was there previously, she was in their conduct office. She went back to be the director of that office. So it was a good opportunity that she really couldn't pass up, and it came very quickly. So she sends her regrets that she couldn't share that information with you personally. Student affairs, we are in the process of identifying another good fit to join us here. So we're hoping that if not by the next meeting, then certainly the one after that, we'll have a new administrative rep to join us, and we'll be able to introduce that person to you. There's something else that I would want to address before you all start holding your retreats. And I want to remind you that as written into the University of California system-wide policies, USAC is an official university entity. Everything you do is an official university program. So that means, as an undergraduate body where the majority of your membership is under age 21, student alcohol policy applies to everything you do. And that specifically means there can be no alcohol at any USAC retreats. So I want to encourage you all to read the student alcohol policy, understand what it has in it, what the restrictions and requirements are. It can be found on the Dean of Students website. There is a tab for alcohol policies. And please respect that policy as you plan the bonding activities that are a valuable part of the retreats that you'll have both as a council and for probably each of your offices. So, we wanted to put that out there, as well as best practices for any group that's going on a retreat, not to have alcohol present. There is a unique relationship between USAC because you are an official university entity, whereas registered campus organizations technically are not. So they have a different relationship with the university and different policies that apply. So I did want to share that. Look forward to hearing about planning and scheduling for the USAC retreat, which will probably be end of summer, start of fall.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Geller. Now to, right?
Sure, well, actually, on the lines of the retreat, one other thing I want to mention, if you're all starting to plan. It should be in your packets, but I can send it all out to you again. It's really important to have a walkthrough of whatever location you're going to be having or staying overnight in your retreat. We've had issues in the past where landlords become upset that the retreat was too loud or that there was damage to the house. And without doing those walkthroughs and taking photos before and after you're leaving, they can sometimes hear UCLA and want you to fix things that you may not have damaged. So safeguard yourself. It's really important to do a walkthrough. If you can do it with the manager, even better. If not, do it yourself. I created a checked out walkthrough sheet that can be used as you enter and as you leave, just to make sure that you're not being held liable for items that you didn't end up damaging.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and, an observation about that is really scrupulous, focused landlords in that case probably have their own sheet for that. So if they don't have it, you really want the limit that you because that's going to make sure that you're covered. But,
Okay, thank you, Roy. And that concludes our administrative representatives and all of our officer member reports. Now we will move into fund allocations, and our only allocation we have today is contingency program. So I'll turn it over.
Well, for summer, only 4 organizations applied. They required $10,450.63. They requested for $4,406.39. Finance committee recommends $1,224.
Okay, so
I move to approve the contingency allocation for $1,254.
seconded. Ashley, all those in favor, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8. All those opposed? And all those abstaining? There is your vote. The contingency allocation has been approved. And that concludes our funding allocation. Seeing that we have no old business, we will jump into our new business item, which is going to be the approval of the 2016-2017 USA budget for the year. So that's really exciting. So, I guess, what's the process to discuss this? Should we call for a vote first to?
You can make a motion to approve the budget, and then you can make amendments during the discussion portion.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, great. So can I entertain a motion?
I move to approve the 2016-2017 USA budget.
Second? By Ashley. Okay, so now we're moving into discussion. So, Sabrina, or did someone raise the question?
Yeah, sorry.
Do you want to hand it over to Lauren?
Yeah.
would you like me to start with kind of an overview?
If you could do an overview for the council, that would be good.
Okay, so, the most basic overview is the document that you have is going to be structured such that there's essentially on the top of the sheet is going to have all your income. And then in the bottom area, it's going to then sort of indicate the way it's supposed to outflow. Generally, that's pretty much in pretty close sync, except that there are distinctions. Your oldest fee is what we just call the membership fee in general, and that fee is the most sort of flexible fee that you have. It can be applied to any of your expenses. It doesn't have to do any specific thing. So by and large, that's where you're going to cover almost all of your administrative, just the housekeeping things, right? They're not exciting things. It's paying for accounting and paying for lights in rooms that are your offices, things like that. That's where your stipends can be paid out of that. The election board can be paid out of that. So that's your most flexible fee. The way this is structured, you have expenses, income on the top, and then in the bottom area, much of that is channeled into distinct channels that you can't really change very much. So if there is a fee for campus retention committee, then it has to really outflow to the campus retention committee. You can't redirect it to community service. The intention of the voters is what's going to govern that situation. Now, aside from that basic structural thing, the way this is structured is essentially that when everything is accounted for, there ends up being basically what ends up being a remainder. And the remainder is what your SDOF and your SUD accounts are. They basically are just formed by what is left after everything else has been accounted for. So, the amounts of money down there aren't so much things and amounts that you have specifically chosen to either amply fund or to not amply fund. It is really derives from all the other activity listed above. You have one subordinate sheet to this other sheet, which is your administrative overhead is pulled out a little bit separately. So on your budget document, it's going to be summarized as administrative overhead. It's going to make reference to Schedule B. So that's listed here as well. Another primary thing I'll point out to you is compared to budgets of the past, the biggest things that are in here, of course, is a lot of money that were approved by the voters last year in a whole set of fee authorized functions. Those are all really clearly called out here in a very orderly way, and I think they very much comport with the way that the ballot would call them out. These monies are all part of the Undergraduate Student Association funding, and so, but at the same time, the voters specifically validated X amount of fee for X function. So, again, all of that money is recognized here. So that's your basic overview. A lot of things you can't necessarily change that much. As I say, you can't just take money from the student justice camps and say, we don't want it there, we'd rather have it be in student risk education. You have to stick with the guidance, the direction from the voters. Beyond that, you can make changes in things like how much money you allocate from your membership fee to contingency, or how you allocate SDOF versus SUP. You can jigger those numbers. There's some things in your overhead budget that you can change. How much you give to election board, how much you give to your retreats. Those are the things that you guys certainly can discuss and change. I mean, I think that's a basic overview. I mean, if there's any questions you have on just the meat and potatoes before you get into what you want to change or what people want to advocate to change, I don't know if there's any questions if that overview seems clear.
I think before we get the proposals that people might have for the budget, if any of the council has questions about any of the different funds or expenditures or sources of income, if anyone has for Roy or for, and thank you so much for Roy, David Simmons, Patty, for everyone being here and putting this together for us. We really appreciate it. And thank you so much. So does anyone have any questions for
Since we are in every other year for OSAC, what is the money? Does the money go to fund stipends for the committee, or what does that fund? Yeah.
Yes, stipends. The reason for the jump is because it is every other year. We're having essentially 2 years of the minimum wage increase show.
Reminding us that our stipends are tied to California.
The other income from 2014-15, where was that derived from?
So other income, thank you for asking that is something I should have sort of called out separately. So those areas that are indicated in that place, so you can see that in 14-15 actuals, there's numbers there, but in general, there are no numbers in your budget. That's because those monies do not derive from mandatory student fees, which is essentially what we're discussing today. Those are monies that either, other income can be, fundraising, so a lot of that is probably primarily dance money. That money flows through here, and that was, very large amount of money. It could be ticket sales at the Jazz Reggae Festival for seating. It could be anything, those things we consider other income. There's other things in here like program support. That can be other university funding bodies that lend support to a program that is at the table that the money is going to flow through SGA on its path to expenditure. Surplus withdrawal is the remainders that transfer. Surplus is not really a subject for today, but in general, that is money that transfers from one fiscal year across into the next as unexpended funds that therefore are classified as surplus. So that's listed separately. So these are all things that are kind of separate from the mandatory student fees that you guys are charged with overseeing the expenditure of collected in this year, in 16-17. So the monies collected from the 16-17 student body are expended for the good of the 16-17 student body.
Additional questions from the council right now for Roy while we're engaging him in conversation. And of course, throughout this discussion, feel free to go and ask any questions, but at least one thing that I'd like to talk about, and just bring to everyone's attention is that, as you saw from last year, our budget increased by almost 50%, or somewhere around 50%, went from 4.3 to 6.3 million dollars with the passage of the 4 referenda. And, that's something that is going to be incredibly important, that, is on our responsibility to figure out how, the dispersion of all those referenda and those fees collected to these various parts of campus. And I think that's something that's really important for us as USAC, in distributing these fees and continuing along with really holding ourselves and making sure that the students who voted on these are that it's going to everything, and that, we're holding ourselves accountable to that we really revisit something that Zach brought up before, these memoranda of understanding, and that we go through, and something that I'm really interested in talking about in the future is creating an ad hoc committee for council for people who are interested to figure out how these different funds and different bodies that are created with these referenda, how they have their funding guidelines created, how they have different mechanisms to ensure that they are reporting on their finances to council, and all these different things that come with the influx of all this cash. So that's just something that I want to put out there for you all to think about. I'll probably send an email in the next few days and weeks as the summer progresses to talk about that more, and then the next council meeting, or the council meeting after that, propose for the creation of this community and sit down and talk to the different entities on campus who are receiving these funds and create the framework that we want to see that these funds are allocated in a swift and responsible way. So that's just something I've written out there for you all to think about. Additional just discussion with the council, amendments and whatnot.
This is something I've talked to you about, Jamie, and to the admins, but, so the USAC secretary showed the administrative overhead breakdown, and it's, basically that's the chief of staff in the president's office, it's $10,000 a year. I want to discuss with the council the idea of eliminating that, stipend, because it's the only office that has the actual stipend from our budget. The other options that give stipends is through their own referendum money, or significantly decrease.
I would like, Danny, is that something that you plan on utilizing, the USAC secretary?
Well, just to go over the history, Roy, can you explain the history again of the USAC secretary, kind of
I mean, going back so much further, you know, there has been chiefs of staff for a number of years. Going back into the deeper history, you know, the wording of it implies a more significant.
Wasn't the press secretary Rebecca?
Well, I don't think it was a press secretary, but it may have been somebody I think it was an administrative function. I don't know that it's, you know, there's always been a position equivalent to Patty's, that really sort of facilitated the operation of the council, so I don't think.
Back in the day, it was a career position, at least 30 years ago, it was a career position. And then they reduced it to, student.
So I would say that maybe the evolution there is that the career positions that support the association's functions are all represented in the administrative overhead budget now. So that's gonna be, you know, Patty and Debbie and Irma and, so that's specifically what it is. So it could have evolved that position became, you know, evolved more specifically what Patty's position is, or maybe there were more resources in the past, but that as times became routine and was reduced. And for quite a while, it's been either chiefs of staff or office staff. I don't know if those are the chiefs of staff versus office staff.
And maybe just a question for my clarification. When that fund is allocated, is that just something that, like, the president has purview over and they just allocate to members of USAC, or is it money that?
I think that normally would be a position to hire, you select positions you want to have stipended, and then once you select them, and I believe that's simply the purview, in this case, the purview of the president. I think 2 years ago, the fund was reasonably fully utilized. Last year, it was not utilized in particular. There's only about $1,900 has come out of that account thus far in the year that it was presented. The year before that, I think it was 2 chiefs of staff, or was it mixed? Yeah, so, you know, I think that is presidential staff stipended to the payroll system.
Okay. So, did you have thoughts on?
My argument, a couple arguments. My argument for it is that last year it was not utilized. In years past it has been, last year was not utilized, so that argument is the necessity of the stipend. My second argument for this, and of course the council knows that, is that if this is decreased, SCOF is increased, because basically our work is the extra from the administrative overhead will be given to SCOF, so different offices. And then my last argument is that there are no other chiefs of staff that are stipended through this project.
Just one clarifying. So it will be split 80-20, SCOF and student.
Okay.
So as reduced here, not unless you're specifically requested to be moved all to one of those lines, but the remainder is calculated 80-20. Unless you decide.
Okay, is there action that, my personal thoughts on that position is that, you know, aside from the historical precedent, I think that there should be a level of fairness to all the chiefs of staff within USA. And just, the one solution that I just thought of right now, that something that might be, I think, really equitable, depending on how we want to allocate them, because we know that our chiefs, and some of the chiefs in USAC already are given stipend positions, I believe, in some of the offices that receive referenda, or if I'm correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, but for those of us who don't, we know that our chiefs put in an incredible amount of work for our office, and really, you know, the ones who are running so much, and I think something that could be useful is redistributing this USA fund to, or at least a part of it, to all the chiefs in USAC who don't receive stipends right now. If that's something that the council wants to think about, we could dump it all into SCOF, contingency or something. I think one thing, if we want to keep in mind with the tradition or the historical, like, precedence of this USA Secretary Fund, then we might want to consider, redistributing it to the different chiefs of staff in USAC so that, they are really being able to afford to be in these leadership positions and, 'cause I know, at least speaking at least for my chief of staff personally, they both worked jobs last year and being able to have this role, it would really help them immensely to be able to have, these funds, the stipend in position to be able to carry out their duties and be supportive of the Office of the President, be supportive of USAC. So that's just where I'm coming from, but does anyone else have thoughts on that or possible solutions? Andy?
Whereas I do see the strength of, I guess, moving that towards other chiefs of staff, realistically, then that cuts out the conversation of this money going towards student organizations through funds such as contingency, because there are a lot of students on this campus that have the same scenario where they are the president of an organization. Where they're running a full organization, but they're not getting paid for any of it at all. And their only thing that is their concern is being able to continue to run the organization, as opposed to the concern where we have, where we are in privileged positions, worrying about, are we getting paid for our position? Whereas they're just elected and do their work for the whole year, but they also carry on a job. I know a lot of cultural organization presidents that not only carry on a second job, but also pay for like their rent and all the other things that students have to pay for. So personally, I feel like it should go back to the students if USAC itself isn't using it, because at the end of the day, we are serving students. That's why we run the programs that we do put on. I believe that money should go back into a already dwindling pool of money every single year, as we saw with the referendum this past year. That's why there was such a huge push. The students would say we don't have enough money to only increase the pool of money that we have.
And I think to that, I think that raises a great point because actually with the referendum that passed specifically wellness, that's actually, this contingency has ballooned this year and it's going to continue to go up. So some of those concerns hopefully over time are going to be alleviated, and I'm sure the authors of the referendum, if Zach wants to add in on anything to that, but you can look at the budget, contingency is increasing by a significant, it's doubling this year, which is fantastic for students, and it's continued to go up because of the way it's indexed. So I think your concerns about that are valid, and I think that we have to consider the contingencies increasing by that much, just continue to increase. And with this USA Secretary, this drop in the bucket, which obviously we can have in, given how much contingency is increasing versus the amount that USA Secretary is, we might want to consider these other ways that, we can talk about using it, considering how much these other pools for students are increasing that rate.
Just add on to the discussion about pretty much not for like it's like organizational leaders, especially student officers for information. It was how you should have focus about how information should go. Like some things do, so it would go geared towards those for students.
Exactly.
Do we know, because I know, because right now, it's something to consider with the increase in contingency and whatnot. I don't think that's something we're obviously going to look at with the extra funds that we have, but one thing we should be looking at is SUP. But the problem with SUP in past years is that it's not utilized, or it's applied to, it's overly applied to. But I don't know what the percentage is this past year, but I know the year before, 60% of the money that was allocated was actually like cashed in with GenRex and stuff. So students are allocated all this money, only 60% of it is actually used for SUP and ESCOP, but having that money there for student groups to apply to, like you said, for stipends, technically, if we were to pull that money and put it into the USAC offices could apply to it as their independent student entity within themselves for stipends, as well as supporting all the students. It's something I just kind of want to, more of the narrative that this budget portrays. We see last year that SUP had $35,000, and right now it's showing a projected original of $18,000. When we approved the budget, the narrative being told is that USAC has cut student funding 50% by voting this budget the way it is with 18,000, because we reduced it half from last year by not looking for ways in which to add more to it right now. And so that might just be something to look at if we are looking to support student groups, because SUP funds things, the contingency doesn't fund.
And I think that's another discussion that I wanted to have about, you know, the viability of something like SUP versus contingency, and, you know, trying to, in effect, streamline the funding source that we have on campus and talk about, you know, do we want to keep SUP as it is? Do we want to totally remove everything from SUP and put it in another funding source? And different ways to make funding more accessible and easier for students and student groups. So you raised a point that I was actually going to touch on a little bit, but before we get to that developmental discussion, I'd like to resolve the question of USA Secretary and how we want to go about that. So, go ahead.
If I just make a general observation, I mean, I don't have a dog in the chase, other than a general observation about organizations and organizations being effective. You know, this body is the elected body, represents 29,000 undergraduate students that is involved in shared governance. And, you know, having adequacy of staff supporting your offices can be, where done correctly, wise investment to make sure that you're able to be maximally effective. So, I mean, sometimes, you need to make some investments that allow you to be as effective as you can be. Now, there can be ways that you can, have those staffs, be as committed and do all the work, and they don't need a stipend, and that's, you guys know that better than I guess. Making the observation, they could be unstipended, but staff that supports your offices, that allow you to be as effective as possible, could be considered good stewardship of the responsibility that you guys are going to have for the entire undergraduate body. So, I think it's important to take their positions seriously in that way.
I just have a question, because I'm just not sure. For SCOF, we, like, our offices take the money that we get to give second searches. Because that's kind of like a compromise if you do the 80-20, it's super 80 for everything. Giving, if you take away the USA Secretary, 80 would go to SUP, 20 would go to SCOF, so you can technically do the, still have your chief stipend if you would SCOF as well as giving them to SUP.
No, I think there is a bylaw that says only 6% of your stock can be used towards.
What is the council's thought on this?
Personally, excuse me, I personally think that's a good compromise. So it'll be 20% for SCOF, and then of that 40, did you say 40%?
80%, that's the 80 plus 60.
Right, but within SCOF, 60% can be used for stipends. I think that might come to a reasonable balance between allocating money to staff and then also.
And considering that, SDOF is such a small funding source already, if we want to revisit the bylaw that says that 60% threshold, then, we want to revisit that if that's something the council wants to talk about later. But I personally think that that is something that is the most equitable way, because personally, I think $10,000 just going to the president's chief is not fair at all. So reallocating that in a way where we can get the most bang for our buck, so to speak, I think, and what Sabrina and Sandra are advocating for. All right.
Yeah, so was that saying that SUP's money wasn't used to its full potential this past year? So would it be affected 80% of this 10,000 would go into underutilized course?
Well, it's unutilized, you say it's not allocated, or it's allocated, but not,
It's allocated, hang on. So would 80% of this money also not be cashed in?
I'd have to go.
So,
there's no way to say whether a group that gets an award is going to use it or not. Some are going to use 100%, some are going to use 0, others some are going to use 20. If the numbers are at about 60% utilization, it may or may not stay like that. Piece of that is what you can do with education and outreach. Really help the groups that get these awards understand what they can and can't do. You could have your budget review director doing outreach quarterly to say, hey, you've got this amount of money, you haven't used it yet, as a reminder, this is what you do with it. You can do things to try and increase utilization, but certainly more and more groups are applying, and as a result, the awards they're getting are smaller and smaller. And so when you get almost nothing, sometimes it just seems like, why bother? So I think some of it going unused is about the small size of the.
For perhaps to hear your suggestion, I think what's difficult is that I would recommend would be updated is the cap, how much you can apply for a student. Because the cap is really high on the application, and it's 3,000 or 3,500. And so they're applying for big sums of money, but we have usually around 300 students, 300 groups that apply for students. And so allocations are usually between $100 and $300. So perhaps changing the cap to 500, so at least students have a better gauge as to what to expect in an allocation than I just asked for 3,000 and I got 200. Can feel more.
Really quickly, Kevin, before, something that I'm thinking in hearing these conversations is, given that the amount that the amount of student groups that apply for SUP is so large and the individual amounts that they're getting is so little, enrollment is going up this year, so you can assume, it's safe to assume that in the future that the amount that each group is going to get pursued is going to go down even more, because there's going to be more students that are applying, more student groups. I think that would be logical to think that. So I think that it might be in our benefit, best getting the most funds to students to totally remove SUP this year and put it into something like a contingency or a body like that. I think that can be useful because that is the most publicized, funding source, the most applied for, the largest pool. So that's just one idea that, might be in service to SUP.
And I think that's a really useful thing for you to think about, because sort of the SUP is functioning within your budget almost like there's that island in the Pacific that as the ocean rises, it's the canary in the coal mine. So what's happened is your membership fee is not indexed to inflation. So slowly as inflation occurs, since SUP essentially is a remainder, as inflation increases the other expenses, the way it shows itself in your budget is shrinking SUP. Now, there can be ways to offset it, as Zach said. You can find ways to try to refill the coffer, but it wasn't that many years ago that it was a large sum of money that was, functional and that was really useful. So as it dwindles, a way to consolidate it with some other funds to maintain some critical mass of functionality is really something I think is worth the investment.
What has council thought about that idea? Totally taking what's in SUP this year and saying that we're going to put it in a contingency or something like that. So, yeah.
Like SUP, I guess with media issues, we're said, but totally combining them together should be discussed later. And just to add that SUP is utilized since a lot of SUP organizations have applied in the second year. But a big current issue would be that not many students or student computers have access to funds, and they usually figure that out after the due date of the requisition. And I think, well, I plan on collaborating together with the jury director to provide more enrichment or workshops to educate more student leaders about how to access their future the upcoming year.
So with that being said, then we might want to make funding easier for students as possible. So by taking what we have in soup and putting it in a larger pool, so, you know, there's not as many due dates and not as much of this sort of, you know, hysteria that might be going, trying to find what funding is and what, you know, what funding sources are. I think, I venture to say that that would be a good use of reallocation.
I don't think putting it together is the most viable option. The universal funding I find to be a way to bypass the issue and actually have students looking for some more about funding. Just your very simplified application, how to access it, because it does run with different items compared to others.
So if we wanted to make like a universal funding app or something, and that, I mean, that would have to be, we have to go through bylaws and have to, it would be a longer process.
Yeah, that was the goal.
Okay, yeah.
So, there are some significant differences in how soup can be used compared to contingency. Contingency applies for specific programs and it has some limitations. It doesn't cover stipends. You've got differences between the two on what can fund t-shirts, for example. So if you're going to consider eliminating soup, I think you need to do it in the big picture context of looking at criteria for how DOD, how contingency, how all of your funds can actually be used. And if you decide that stipends for officers and student organizations is something important, then if you eliminate soup, you've got to add flexibility to one of your other funds so that those types of things, if they're still priorities, can be done somewhere else. They're not necessarily interchangeable. There are challenges as all of these get smaller and the awards get smaller and and certainly no easy solution. Something else you might want to consider, your council discretionary is currently at 16,000, which is fairly high in some ways. Another one that doesn't get used a lot, but it seems like you may not have answers today to all the questions around soup and contingency. Another alternative would be to move this USA secretary into the discretionary, buying you time to think about how you want to use these other funds, and then you can allocate any week of the year that you meet out of your council's discretionary into soup, into contingency, whatever way you end up deciding is the best place to serve the needs of students and student groups. So it's another alternative if you want to be able to move forward with the budget and still do some work around this issue and come up with a clear solution for students and student groups.
Just the only thing I want to add, and I think that's quite right on essentially all the points. The only thing I would say though is that in some ways, soup as a funding source for stipends, while contingency doesn't allow it. I mean, in some sense, you need to just recognize that ship has sailed. There are no longer sufficient funds within that pool to really support stipending. And that wasn't any, you know, it's just inflation's eating that money away to the point that, you know, when that was, you know, $150,000 or something that it was a few years ago, that was an option. But those other observations of consolidating your options and reviewing this for later is certainly an option.
That's in the council. I would enter.
Yeah, I agree, with the professor. I think it's hard for us to make a decision right now whether we should see for contingency. So I think if we have more time to reevaluate our priorities, as different issues come up and we have to allocate money.
Okay, would the council be in favor of adding an amendment to the budget to reallocate the USA Secretary fund to council discretionary? So can I entertain an amendment?
move to amend, the USAC Secretary Fund $10,000 to add into council discretionary fund to make it $26,000.
Okay, so that will be a friendly amendment. Yeah, second round. So I think that'll be a friendly amendment, and we'll go ahead after we make all our recommendations, and we can vote on it as one budget at the end of the meeting, instead of voting on each individual line item, which I just think is not an effective use of it. Okay, so that will be recorded then, so the USA Secretary from being allocated to discretionary. Does the council, so have we decided, I mean, I'm very intrigued about seeing what we can do to talk about a universal funding app or something like that, to really consolidate funding to make it as simple as possible for students to get their money. So, yeah.
Was it like the beginning of the streamlining article that was shared? What was that?
Maybe IBP, did you wanna?
Yeah, there's some different works with like, maybe I really haven't all passed through this yet, but the idea of we can do this out of one app, and we can try to one app only, then we can like get any of the funding that we actually can get. That is an idea that has been around for a long time, but nobody has taken initiative to do so. And that's what we kind of talked about, we can use working with FICOM and BRD and figure out a way, if we could have like one application, and then we can send out to all like the streamline, to all the different funding bodies to make it an incredibly easier process for everyone.
Okay, so I think that that's something that I would be really support the council to investigate over the summer, over the school year, to talk about that with Kevin to see, but to take action right now to either to get rid of soup or something like that, I think would not be in our best interest in serving students. So that's what I think, but continuing that conversation is something that I would really suggest the council to think about. Another area that I would like to talk about is, given SDOF and SUF right now, the way SDOF is structured, and this is something that council did last year, was all the offices that receive only SDOF versus offices that we SDOF and an incredible amount of funding from referenda. Something that the council did last year that I think is very effective in makes running our offices much more equitable, is taking all the offices that receive referenda and SDOF and only taking that SDOF and redistributing amongst the offices that only get SDOF. Because it's such a minuscule amount compared to the enormity of funds you get from your referenda. So in terms of all our offices, such as the president, the IBP, the general representative, the transfer representative, I think facilities is in there too. I'm probably leaving out, I think, FSC too. So that's something the council did last year that I thought was really in the interest. So I would recommend to the council to want to add an amendment to do that again this year. Does anyone have thoughts or? Can I suggest someone propose that as a friendly amendment?
I mean, obviously, seeing as AAC does receive a lot of the funding, and to see like, you know, my fellow commissioners not be able to have that same allocation, as I've heard a lot of concerns about trying to do a lot of programming events and just not having the funds, like I definitely not trying to hoard all the money. So I think that it could be in our best interest to go ahead and give that to some of the commissions that don't receive funding, like I do, as well as, you know, also for EDP. I know there's a lot of funding as well, so.
So do you propose it as a friendly amendment to the budget?
Yeah, I think we want to go and move to that.
Okay. Are there objections to that before we?
You have a vote on it, so that you have to move and second and vote, because we're making a change.
Okay.
Which line item that we didn't go and look at that?
We were.
Yeah.
We're planning on, because we added the friendly amendment for the USA discretionary, so we can do the same for this.
Okay, just make sure.
Okay, but yeah, so you formally, is there a actually be a second?
Line item, that's like,
Near the absolute bottom, third thing from the bottom.
So this is the reallocation of all SDOF funding from offices that bring in referendum and SDOF, and redistribute that amongst the offices that only receive SDOF. So that was proposed by Ashley. Is there a second? Is that friendly enough? That. Okay, so we will.
And then just on the.
Yeah, and what, yeah, okay. So, actually, I have a question on this about SDOF and about the guidelines, at least being general earlier last year and working with SDOF. What SDOF can be used for, I think, it can be pretty stringent, being on office supplies or that kind of stuff, but we can't use it for programming.
And retreat.
And for research, but we can't use it for like general programming on campus. And something that I'd like the council to consider is, if, would it be possible to do this today, or would it have to be, I know, would it have to be a bylaw change?
Could you? Right, I think you do that.
Can we,
You
but
can do that later, you have to change your guidelines for it.
okay.
All you need to do today is look how much money is in that account, and you can go later on
Okay.
changes to the guidelines and how it's spent.
Okay, but, okay, then that's just something that I'd like the council to consider in the future, is to talk about making it so that SDOF's guidelines are expanded, because I think a lot of SDOF, if I'm correct, does not get fully utilized every year. And I think they do the part that you can't use it for programming. And I think that that's an essential part of the USAC's function, to be able to expand SDOF's function so they can use it on various, different things that we're doing on and off campus, would be something to consider. So we'll talk about that later, I guess, there's nothing right now, but were there additional changes to the budget that any member of the council wanted to propose or ask questions about? And looking over, I know that this is a lot, I've had to look over this many times to fully, I probably still don't fully grasp everything in the budget, but is there anything else, or I can call a question?
I have a question, Debbie, actually, when we were talking, is, so like for some of the new plan items, like the academic advanced program, the women's extend hours, the travel mini fund for AAC as well as the CAPS, if there is going to be like a new body overseeing those specifically, or if so, those are stipend. This doesn't have to be taken out of super amount.
Well, I'm thinking since you put the 26,000 in your discretionary, maybe you can use that to figure out the side of the month. That'd be 4%.
And that can be after the fact.
Yes.
But is it not an option that the body allocates a stipend from its own funds?
Oh, from its own.
Yeah, it has its own funds, can it give the stipend from its own funds rather than taking it from the USAC pool that's already spent?
Well, that could be a decision you make, when you're writing out your procedures.
I was just gonna say, for like all these new funds coming in with, social justice and wellness or whatever they need to be, bylaws will have to be written for how these procedures and funds will be allocated, so stipends need to be, they have to go in there for how we're allocating funds.
Yeah, and I think that, not to turn on too much longer, but like I said at the beginning of this budget, I'd like to establish this committee, and for anyone that wants to be on that, to go through each fund for each referendum that passed in each component, and sit down with student leadership and administration, and really, what are the guidelines really gonna be, draft up these memorandums of understanding so that they know the responsibility to report to the student body and to USAC on how these funds are being dispersed and how they're being spent. So that's a conversation that is probably gonna be ongoing throughout the year, just to, reiterate on that. But were there additional recommendations to the budget that members of the council have? Okay, can I entertain someone to call the question? I think I'm allowed to.
When you call the question, I would say, we'd like to move to approve as amended, because we made amendments,
Okay.
and then read off those amendments, and then vote. And
Okay.
that would be cleaner, so it's clear in the minutes what we're voting.
Okay, then,
I just had a question for council, for the election board fund. They seem to do very well, this past year with the amount that they're given. Do we want to discuss changing the amount or?
I would say, having voted on the budget last year for the election board, we actually reduced it last year to less, and they did operate better. But something that I just think is really important is the cost of my UCLA which will change from year to year, and especially if we want to implement this randomized ballot order, which is something that the last council added to the bylaws for election board. So I would recommend us not touching the election board budget to see how we're gonna affect, the cost of my USAC that's gonna go up, or if we want to talk about randomized ballot. So that's just a recommendation. Okay, then can I entertain a motion to approve the budget as amended? I have to repeat the amendments. I'm sorry, that we added. One being moving the USAC secretary fund to council discretionary, and the other one was, SCOT, reallocating SCOT to the offices, the USAC offices that only receive SCOT. And those are the two amendments. So, can I entertain that?
I move to approve the amended USAC 2016-2017 budget.
Seconded by Ashley. All those in favor, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All those opposed? And all those abstaining? So 8-0-0 vote, we've approved our budget for the year. Thank you again so much to Debbie, Patty, and Roy for preparing all these documents and walking through this with all of us. We did not know at all what we're doing. So thank you for that. Okay, so now we will move into signing the attendance sheet. And I guess we're going to call to adjourn the meeting. So can I entertain a motion to adjourn council?
I move to,
I move to adjourn at 9:05.
Okay, can I have a second? All those in favor of adjourn? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All those opposed? And all those abstaining? We've adjourned council at 9:05. Now we will conclude with. So now, if you want to turn off some of these.